Ross, good to have you here again and to hear your testimony. I want to point out the fact I think clean water is a bipartisan affair. We all want to make sure that our children and our family and our community has access to safe drinking water. And I also want Americans to fully understand the challenge of PFAS in our drinking water and our food chain. So just to help clarify, we know that PFOA and PFOS is not being used as it has been in the past. And we even heard testimony last week from 3M that they voluntarily stopped using it and selling it, a highly profitable product. And the reason they probably did that was because they recognized the environmental impact and the potential liability that resulted in a $875 million settlement, not a judgment, settlement with the state of Minnesota. There are 5,000, roughly 5,000 to 6,000 chemicals in the PFAS family. Is it your belief that all or most of these have health consequences?
We simply don't know, which is why our scientists are working on developing toxicological profiles for the next batch of chemicals, and more importantly, looking at high-throughput toxicology work that takes a look at the group of chemicals to figure out if we can sort of weight which ones may warrant quicker, faster study.
But they're all the same class.
We don't know.
They're all in the same class. We have studies out there, even internal 3M studies that show that accumulation of PFAS, whether it's PFOA, PFOS, or the full range of even short chain compounds, can cause negative consequences. Are you concerned that the American public is the guinea pig here as we determine the effect of these compounds on our health?
Well, these chemicals have been in production since the 1940s and are part of our everyday life, including
literally.
Yeah, literally, and including putting out fires and saving lives on Navy ships and at airports, and in the medical community relies on these. And so, the challenge is, as I've learned from the toxicologists, for example, in the tox work we're doing on Gen X and PFBS, you're seeing shorter chains but yet they still have adverse health effects, but they're different health effects than the PFOA and PFOS. And so we really, right now, the short answer is our scientists need time to really figure this out, and that's one of the primary goals of the agency right now, is give our scientists the leeway to run and develop and close the information gap.
So when I look at the overall concerns, though, you've got a parts per trillion of 70 issued by the EPA. Clearly, there is some scientific evidence that the EPA decided to use that number as the benchmark, where above that is concerning for an individual's health. So even though you haven't done the toxicity studies on every single compound, you have drawn the conclusion that 70 is a benchmark for all compounds, correct?
For PFOA and PFOS, those two compounds.
Okay.
So that was based on specific studies supporting both the PFOA, PFOA, and PFOS. But as far as the standards, there are chemicals that we don't know the toxicological profile for, and so we don't know what the number would be if we would go through and establish a health advisory, and that's the information that we're trying to gather.
And I emphasize the concern is that we may be looking back 5, 10, 15 years from now and wondering why this body and the EPA did not take action on a class of chemicals that they knew were diminishing the health of Americans and allowing it to be dumped in rivers, and allowing it to be used on crops, to be introduced into our food chain, and us not taking action quick enough or deep enough to address this issue. Are you concerned about the EPA not moving fast enough in this regard?
Well, I'll tell you, actually, it's one of the reasons when I was talking to our drinking water program and learning from the scientists early last year, I didn't want to be the person looking back 10 years from now and saying EPA missed it. And it's one of the reasons why we established the leadership summit that we held, the listening sessions throughout the country, and the development of the action plan. It was designed specifically to make sure that we weren't looking back 10, 15 years from now and said we missed it. And so that was definitely in my forefront of my mind as we were thinking about developing the action plan.
And as that action plan comes forth and you get the studies done, if we learn that much of the drinking water, significant amounts of the drinking water being consumed by Americans in everyday life is above certain levels. When you look at the remediation that would have to take place, and right now the best technology to do that is reverse osmosis, which is basically desalination. We're talking major expenses for every single water district that's affected with high volumes of PFAS chemicals. How do you envision us being able to address that? And my point really being, the sooner we address the dissemination of those chemicals into the environment, the less likelihood we're going to spend a hell of a lot of money on cleanup through improved water.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the things is, we're actually taking a look at the technology, the treatments, because carbon absorption actually takes care of some of the compounds, and does that actually gather additional longer chain compounds versus shorter chain compounds? Yes, reverse osmosis is out there. We actually have to take a look at, does reverse osmosis cover everything? And so, yeah, it's very, very expensive treatment on the back end, which is one of the reasons why we're really focused on, in the short term, where you have exposure, particularly in groundwater near airfields, trying to get the treatment up.
I'd like to get one last question in here, because I'm a little confused by some of the questions about states' rights when it comes to addressing this issue. And on the other hand, we have a president who is constantly trying to take away California's rights in addressing environmental issues. Is it your testimony or your belief that states should be the primary holders of how we manage the PFAS class of chemicals, or is that do you expect to have an EPA level set for each of these?
Well, I think we need all of the above, local, state, and federal government. We all have a role to play. That's the system that we have, and so while EPA uses its authorities to address PFAS, the states are using their authorities, and local communities are as well. So we need an all of the above strategy. That's my position.
Okay, thank you very much, and I yield back. The chair now recognizes Mr. Garrett.